The Tolkien Road, Episode 25, The Lord of the Rings, Book 1, Chapter 3. 3 is Company. Alright, go ahead. The Tolkien Road, 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 Hi everyone, John Carswell here. Welcome to the Tolkien Road, where we explore Middle-earth and the incredible works and ideas of J.R.R. Tolkien. On this episode, we continue our discussion of The Lord of the Rings with Book 1, Chapter 3 of Fellowship, 3 is Company. In this chapter, Frodo sets out from Hobbiton and does a whole lot of walking. Of course, he also has a near-disastrous run-in with the mysterious Black Riders, and encounters Gildor, a Noldoran elf of the First Age. Also, thanks to contributions from listeners, we experience a veritable haiku tsunami. I hope you enjoy our discussion. And of course, if you haven't already, please leave the Tolkien Road a rating and feedback on iTunes. We'd love to know what you think of the podcast. Enjoy the show. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Tolkien Road. This is John Carswell, your host as always, along with Greta. Greta, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, John?
Wonderful.
You know, I was wondering, has it gotten, I find myself still expecting you to say Talking Tolkien when you're introducing the podcast. Has it become more natural for you to, do you still kind of have to catch yourself when you say a Tolkien Road as opposed to Talking Tolkien, or?
Maybe, just because I got used to saying it a little better.
Yeah.
You know, the whole alliteration is hard to...
yes, that's what I was wondering.
Hard to overcome.
Might play a part.
But,
Yeah. Well, reading chapter 3 today made me really happy that you had changed the name to Tolkien Road.
The Tolkien Road?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, tonight, as Greta hinted at, we are discussing chapter 3 of The Lord of the Rings, chapter 3 of Book 1 of The Lord of the Rings, or chapter 3 of Book 1 of The Fellowship of the Ring, however you want to refer to it. Did you realize, Greta, that The Lord of the Rings is actually considered one work by Tolkien himself, and it's divided into 6 books? And the whole Fellowship, Two Towers, Return of the King, that's all a, sort of an arbitrary thing he had to do because the publisher wanted to be able to break it up into shorter bits.
Because he didn't want to throw a 1,300-page book at people, is that...
Well, he did.
I know Tolkien did. I meant his publisher.
The publisher didn't, yeah.
He thought it'd be more lucrative.
Tolkien was like, I don't see what the problem is.
Right. It's...
You remember what he said in one of the, I think in the foreword, he said, my only wish is that it could have been longer. He's like, I had to cut way too much stuff out. That's just kind of writer Tolkien was.
I did not realize that, though.
Yeah.
I thought that's how he had written it. I thought he had written it. And, I thought it was a trilogy.
Well, no, you remember when we were, I think we were reading one of his letters several episodes ago where he talked about, he was still coming up with the names for the 3 parts.
Oh, yeah.
And,
that's
it was like, The Shadow of the Past was the original name of the Fellowship of the Ring, and then the second one was The Shadow Lengthens or something like that.
Right, yes, The Shadow Lengthens.
Or The Return of the Shadow, I think, was the original name of the first one, but yeah.
That's right.
Yes, indeed. Well, without further ado, let's get down to some haiku. You like that?
That was wonderful.
I just came up with that on the spot.
That was really impressive.
Yeah.
Well done.
Pretty awesome. Hey, we've had some more guest submitted haikus since the last episode.
Thank you.
First off, our man Joshua Sosa provided a couple more, so we'll read his. Yeah,
is he the guy that we're not sure if he's a stormtrooper or not?
Well, he confirmed for me that unfortunately he's not the stormtrooper.
He's not the stormtrooper. So he's the guy whose face we can see.
Yes, he's the guy whose face we can see. That's right.
Did he by chance happen to confirm for you that it's okay for me to call him Josh?
No, he didn't.
Darn.
Yeah, so...
Okay, well, maybe if he sends in another one, he could possibly confirm that for me.
Maybe he will. You want me to read this one?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, he actually sent 2, so here's the first one. Fleeing the Shire, pursued by dead kings of 9, Shadowed cloaks ride now.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's really good.
I think that's better than any of the ones I came up with.
That's
tonight,
way better than any of mine. I think that's better than all 4 of mine put together.
Well, let's listen to the second one.
Wait, what
here.
was that one about Riders of Not? What did he say?
He said,
Fleeing the Shire.
Fleeing the Shire, pursued by dead kings of 9.
Dead kings.
Shadowed
of 9.
cloaks ride now.
Wow. That is really good. That's really good. Props, you.
Here's number 2. Gildor the Noldor pronounced Frodo his elf friend and sang of Varda.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Dang. These are good.
Yeah, good stuff.
Wow.
All right. And then we had someone else submit after the last episode. Tom Hooper submitted a couple. Thanks for submitting these, Tom.
Yes, thank you.
So here we go. First one from Tom. Evil floods the Shire, for only the innocent have strength to bear it.
Ooh,
I like that one.
That one's very good.
Yeah. Now you were confused by that before because you thought that the Shire was 2 syllables, but Shire, I think, is best seen as only 1 syllable.
Seen as only 1.
You can definitely pronounce it as 2 syllables. Shire, or
but
it could
that's
just
probably
be Shire.
not how the Hobbits pronounced it.
Right. Shire. Yeah.
Shire.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's definitely how we definitely pronounce it that way in Tennessee too. Shire.
Shire.
Like with
Shire.
thing.
Thing.
Doing the thing.
Just doing my thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How does that keep coming up?
I don't know.
Stop it.
You need to stop.
Stop. All right, next.
Stop.
Good job, Tom. So next one from Tom.
Yes, thank you, Tom.
Frodo. Only one who would leave alone deserves friends who would follow. I really like that one.
That one's really
Again, like I feel like our apprentices are quickly becoming the masters.
They are. I was just thinking, next time you and I need to share ours first.
Yeah.
Because that's a really hard act to follow.
No, seriously.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Actually,
okay.
I don't know that I want to read any of mine right now.
Well, you're going to have to because I'm going to read mine.
Well, oh, man. Well, yours at least are usually better than mine, which means...
Well, let's just see here, okay?
Okay.
Let's just see here. All right. You wrote 4, so read one of yours first because I only wrote 3.
Okay. If we're giving extra points for rhyming, then that will help me out.
That's not part of it.
All right, fine. Much to his dismay, and after quite a delay, Frodo goes away.
You're the queen of the rhyming haiku. There you go.
I'll take it.
Queen of the rhyming haiku.
Hey, I will take it.
All right, here's mine. First, number 1. For a long walk went 3 hobbits in search of some road away from home.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't rhyme, but
But it tells something about the chapter.
definitely satisfactory. Would have gotten good solid C, maybe C plus coming in there.
Yeah.
On the
Yeah, some points taken off for the non-rhyming, but that's okay.
I don't think you understand how haiku works. Do we really need to go over this again?
Or maybe I understand it on a different level.
Perhaps.
That could be higher or lower, however you want to interpret it.
Perhaps.
Okay, here's my next one, which actually none of my other ones rhyme, so I'll get off my rhyming horse now. Okay. Loyal friends he has, and brave too, for they know not where or why they go.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Thanks.
The haiku thing made me think again of why we started doing that, and I think it had something to do with the whole Wayne's World vibe we were going for early on.
Yeah, it did.
Which really we are still going for that. We're trying to be the Wayne's World of Tolkien podcasts, and obviously, and so why are you making that face?
No.
Like you disagree with me?
No, I was trying to think of something clever to say, and I couldn't think of anything.
Too bad.
Yeah.
But I was thinking last night, we haven't talked about that in a while, but then I realized that last night we were at this thing and there was a band there and they played Foxy Lady, which is in the first Jimi Hendrix's Foxy Lady, and then the first Wayne's World movie, that's the one where Garth has his little vision of the blonde-haired lady that he has a crush on, and he starts doing the little Foxy Lady dance.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, random
So that
random
reminded
connection.
you of our Wayne's World vibe.
Yeah. And I gotta say that made me a little uncomfortable when they started playing that, because I think you were the only woman in the room when they started playing that. I was like, okay, are you hitting on my wife? Is that what you're doing, Mr. Musician Guy? So I don't really know, but anyway, it was kind of funny. I just, just random Wayne's World connection, and then I thought of that. So
yeah.
All right, so I'm owing up another haiku here. All right.
Yes.
Gildor, who art thou? Son of Finarfin, or some lesser son of stars?
Oh, I forgot about Finarfin.
Yeah. We'll come back to that, the whole Gildor thing.
Cool. I was hoping we would. I've been missing the elves.
Mm-hmm.
All right, here's my next one. The man in black rides, smelling, crawling, spreading fear. Oh, where is Gandalf?
Nice.
Thanks. I thought the smelling was funny. It seemed like they made a big deal out of the fact that...
About it sniffing?
That he was sniffing.
Sniffing for the ring?
Yeah.
Well, hey. That's what...
Weird thing is, though, is his nose is invisible.
But that's what's interesting about that, though, is that's what animals do. Like, that's like, hunting animals. That's what they...
That's true. They use their...
Yeah, they really use their sense of smell. I was reminded by that after having recently finished Watership Down, and how much they're always using their sense of smell.
That's true.
To detect danger and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think
thought of that.
I think we moderns are very out of touch with our sense of smell.
As long as we're not out of touch with our sense of touch, I think it's all good.
Yeah, well, probably.
But I think you're right.
Way to ruin my philosophical thought.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, next. Black Riders, slaves to the Lord of Mordor. Never shall they rest in peace.
Ooh. Never.
Yeah, I thought that was the best of the three that I did tonight.
That's pretty good. Yeah. I like that. Yeah.
I don't really think it holds a candle to Joshua's or Tom's.
No.
But.
Neither mine. Or here's my last one. In the evil night, they sing of she who gives light, sharing protection.
Nice.
Thanks.
It's pretty sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if we keep on getting people like submitting haikus and everything, we're gonna have to start like just doing one or two ourselves, because we're not gonna really.
We're not doing any, because they stink compared to the ones people are sending in.
No, we have to continue doing it. I'm determined to do them for like every single chapter of Tolkien.
Okay.
Every single thing.
Okay.
But hey, it's great hearing people submit these awesome haikus.
Yeah, they are really great, guys. Keep them coming, please.
Please do.
You're gonna force us to raise our game.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Bring it on.
Yeah.
Bring it on.
That's what I'm talking about.
So, chapter 3.
Finally.
3 is company. Oh, by the way, real quick, let me say, I started a new series on truemyths.org, a new blog writing series. I also post the podcast there, but I've started a new writing series. I'm actually going to be in the process of starting 2 new ones, but I started the first one today, and that is a series on the possibility of Silmarillion films and kind of what's next in the world of Middle-earth and the visual arts, especially in film, maybe some TV discussion. I hope to even start talking more about like the whole idea of a graphic novel, because personally I'd really love to see like graphic novel versions.
That would be really great.
I remember doing the interview with Evan Palmer back in episode 6, and it's disappointing because his Ina Lindale is so wonderful, and it's disappointing to think that the Tolkien estate isn't willing to like let somebody take a stab at a graphic novel version of like somebody that they approve of.
Right,
you know what I'm saying?
Not just Joe Schmo
like
who doesn't...
somebody that they're like, this is our guy to do this, I just think that would be a really... And it seems like something that Tolkien wanted. But anyway, I wrote some about that in this first post today in this particular series, and I'll be writing a lot more about these ideas in the weeks to come.
Now, these ideas that you would like to see, or things that are actually...
So the one I wrote today was about why I think that like there's a lot of talk about how a Silmarillion film will never get made because Christopher Tolkien, who's the literary executor for the Tolkien estate, was so disappointed with Jackson's films.
Okay.
And for a large part, understandably so. I'm not a Jackson hater, but I can understand why Christopher was really disappointed. And I had certainly have my own gripes. We'll talk about that some tonight with Jackson's approach. But my argument in this article is basically that Christopher can't afford not to be the guy who designates somebody and says, you are the guy to make the Silmarillion films for us, right?
Cool.
You are the guy to take this whole world and turn it into something that matches my father's vision, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like, that's what this article is about. That basically kind of the flip side of it'll never happen, saying that Christopher, he has to guarantee that it gets into the right hands, and only he can do that, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of that's the argument that I put forward, and that's kind of where I'm building all this stuff from. So
that sounds great.
Go check it out. Go check it out over at truemyths.org. All right, let's talk some chapter 3. 3 is company.
Do it. That was well planned, huh? That chapter 3 actually has the word 3 in it.
Yeah, man.
This Tolkien, he knew what he was doing, man.
He did. It would have been a little annoying though if he was like chapter 4 was like if he just started following that like chapter 4 is like
4 is a crowd.
Like the 4-way stop at a shortcut to mushrooms or something like that. Chapter 5 is like, a conspiracy of 5 unmasked, but there's only 3 people involved. Why? Because it had to be 5. And chapter 6 is 6 ways into the old forest.
That would have been funny.
Yeah,
but a little obnoxious, I guess.
Yeah.
Tolkien's too cool to do that kind of thing.
Too cool for school. All right.
Totally.
All right, so, I really love that this basically is a chapter about just walking through the woods. Mm-hmm. To me, again, like last week we talked about why I loved the storytelling, how like Tolkien does so much like legend recounting and storytelling, and how I love that aspect of the Lord of the Rings. This week it's just a lot of walking, and I really love how that contributes to a sense of reality in this work. You just get the sense that like every aspect of this world is real. It's not just like, oh yeah, and then they walked through the forest and then they came out on the other side of the forest and they got to where they really wanted to be, which is where the next scene of action happens, Right. And to me, that's even though I do very much enjoy Jackson's takes on the Lord of the Rings with the Lord of the Rings films. As we go through, we'll talk about the ways I think they fall short, but one big way I think they fall short is they're not true to the sense of pace. That's especially true in The Hobbit, but it really hits home here because basically, if you really think about it, Jackson jumps from the end of chapter 2 in the book all the way to chapter 8 or chapter 9 at Bree. Yeah. When they get to Bree. So I mean, it's like he jumps over like 6 chapters, He covers a little bit of a few of them, right? But there's whole chapters he just completely cuts out.
Well, there's no way he could cover it all without the movie being like...
Yeah, and I think true, and I've heard that argument before. I part of me, and this is something I'll talk about eventually in that blog series I write, and eventually I think we'll watch the movies and do kind of our own discussion of them after we've read through the books. Mm-hmm. But even though, you're probably right, like it would have been extremely difficult to successfully deliver a movie of that magnitude and have there be this long drawn out first half of the movie where they're just walking through the forest.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of stuff that happens.
There is. No, I'm not saying it's not worthwhile. I'm just playing devil's advocate. And I mean, they would have had to make like each book would have had to have like 3 parts. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like if they really want to cover, and even then they'd probably still have to leave some stuff out.
Yeah, and that's why I wonder if one day somebody will undertake to make like a TV series adaptation of the work.
So that would be the way to do this.
Yeah.
Really, like do a mini series or something like that.
Yeah.
Where they're just, hour-long episodes. Maybe just take it chapter by chapter. Or
it would just be hard to do now because those movies are so...
They're kind of iconic, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, one of them, the last one won the Academy Award for Best Picture, and
Which one did?
Return of the King.
Oh, did it?
The last one, yeah. But it was kind of given to the whole series, I mean, it was kind of given as like, you did it, here's your Academy Award, and it won a ton of Academy Awards that year. But it's just disappointing to me because that's one of the aspects of this book that I love so much is just how immersed they are, and through the storytelling you are in this world. Mm-hmm. It just takes its time. Yeah. It really does. Yeah. It doesn't rush you through it, and I think that allows the committed reader to get lost in this world.
Yes, it does.
To really feel like they're there.
It does, and it also allows time for character development too, which you really get to know Sam, you get to know Pippin a little bit, and they talk about a lot of important stuff happens.
Yeah.
And stuff, if it wasn't important, Tolkien would have included it, right?
Yeah. Well, so it starts out, and we just finished with the chapter of the Shadow of the Past, and we know that Sam is going to be coming along with Frodo, and it kind of ended on a high note. The chapter ended on a high note where it was like, okay, Frodo now knows what the ring is, and Sam knows he's going with Frodo, and Gandalf's kind of forced Sam into it, even though Sam's excited about going. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, you'd think this next chapter is just going to be like they're rushing out the door to be on their way, and it's like, nope. Several months later, it's like, maybe we should settle back in now, and think about leaving. Mm-hmm. They take their sweet time.
They really do.
They take their sweet time to leave.
Yeah, Frodo's not in a hurry.
Yeah, and so he sells Bag-End finally to the Sackville Bagginses, to his cousin or distant relation or whatever, and they take their time, kind of cleaning out everything that they want to make sure that they don't get their hands on, and drinking the last of the beer and the wine and all that kind of stuff. Right. And then finally they're on their way. And do you remember what kind of where they're going at this point?
Yeah, they're going to, so Frodo bought a house, right? They're trying to not make this look too, like they're kind of trying to do it so without drawing attention. Right. So they're trying to just be like, I'm just going to move to the east part of the Shire. I grew up there. It makes sense, right? Yeah. So he's going over to, was it Buckleberry or Buckland? Buckland, yeah. That's right. Yeah, he's going to Buckland because he found a house. He bought a house over there. Right. Right. And
his friend Mary, Brandy Buck, is going over there to kind of prepare the way for him. And he just decides, he tells everybody, he's like, I'm just going to take a nice leisurely walk with my friends, Sam and Pippin, to get over there. Right.
So I can enjoy my last little look at Bag-End and the sights between here and there.
And there's this other character who gets completely left out of the movie, and I can understand why. But Fredegar Bolger, or Fatty, right? Fatty Bolger. But who happens to be kind of the fifth wheel in this whole equation. You think of the four hobbits and the Fellowship of the Ring, but early on there's actually a fifth. There's Fatty, right? Fatty Bolger.
Does he actually? I know he's mentioned here, but I don't remember from my first time reading it. Is he mentioned in the following chapters? Does he actually join them
a little bit
after Buckland? Okay,
a little bit. We'll see. So he comes up again. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Of course, there's also Folko Boffin, but he doesn't come up nearly as much as Fatty does. Okay. So Frodo sells Bag-End very deliberately to make it kind of look like he's just moving back over to Buckland. He's really trying hard not to arouse any suspicion. Yep. There's still kind of the legend telling going on. They think that that Frodo he's run out of money, and so he's having to sell off and move over here. So that just confirms that he's just another crazy Baggins.
Right.
Just another crazy Baggins.
Right.
But in all reality, he's planning to go to. Where's he actually planning? He's going to Rivendell. Mm-hmm. So, the story starts out and it's like the exact same. It's a very similar trajectory, not the exact same, but a very similar trajectory to The Hobbit, right?
Yeah, to Bilbo starting.
It really does start out kind of like a sequel, like a very, a very similar sequel to The Hobbit.
Right, it does.
Yeah,
they did. I feel like they kind of Tolkien made very clear the parallels he mentioned that Frodo did this just like Bilbo did that, or he left on the same day, or and he went out the same road, out the same gate. But however, didn't Bilbo kind of run out of there right? Didn't he? I mean, he left in a much more scattered, unprepared state than Frodo did.
Yeah, definitely.
But they headed the same direction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same time of year. Yeah.
Yeah.
So definitely a lot of similarities.
Right. No, for sure. And I think that's interesting because it seems like Tolkien is trying to sort of. I think it's good storytelling in terms of a sequel because he's trying to play off what we already know and use that as a launching pad for this whole other, world that we're not prepared for if we're reading it for the first time, that we're not expecting.
Yeah.
And, eventually he's going to take that turn, right, in a different direction than what it's going. Even to the point where in the same chapter, in this chapter, Frodo remarks at one point, he says, "Wow, guys," he said right after he says the road goes ever on poem, he says, "Do you realize that this is the very path that goes through Mirkwood, and that if you let it might take you to the Lonely Mountain or even further into worse places?" Right? So he even makes that connection deliberately and says, "This is the same road that Bilbo took to the Lonely Mountain, right? You could just follow this road on and on and on, and it'll eventually get you to the Lonely Mountain." Right.
Yeah.
If you manage to survive everything in between.
Right.
So, again, drawing very tight parallels with The Hobbit, and again, I think it's to kind of prepare us psychologically for an exciting twist in the action.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, another thing that kind of something that really blows my mind about this is the attention to detail in terms of nature, right? And this happens a lot to me with like older writing, especially. I'm always sort of envious of people who are able to name all of the different like types of flowers and trees, because to me, when I go outside, I'm just like, there's a tree, there's a flower. I don't have the special names for them,
Right. Yeah.
And I feel like that must be something of just being kind of a modern of living in the time that we do. Like it's just in the place that we do, it's more likely to be out of touch with nature.
Yeah.
And right now, as you know, I'm reading the Laudato Si, which is the Pope Francis encyclical that just came out.
Right.
I've been reading that. I'm about 2/3 of the way through, and it's the environmental encyclical is what it's touted as.
Okay.
And again, it's just talking so much about how out of touch with nature we are. But I was really thinking, as I've been reading through this, I'm like, this sounds like Tolkien. Like, it's really pretty funny. I'm like, this sounds so much.
The Pope's writing sounds like.
And I don't think I really don't think he's ever a Tolkien because he's Argentinian, and I don't think Tolkien is nearly as popular in most Latin American cultures as he is in English speaking cultures. I think he's gaining ground there, but I don't think that a man of Francis's generation would be very likely to have read Tolkien at this point. I could be wrong, but when I read it, I'm just like, this sounds like some long lost writing of Tolkien as I read it. Just all of the different themes he's going through, like talking about how we overuse technology and we misuse technology in order to cut corners, and we don't think about the costs associated to the environment and that sort of thing. And as I'm reading the Fellowship, again, I'm just reminded of how out of touch with the natural world.
Yes.
I really feel like I am.
Yeah.
Lately I've been trying to go out in the morning a little more and just like kind of sit in the backyard and take it all in. See all the birds and everything, and hear all the birds, and just kind of before things get really busy, just kind of taking it all in, and hopefully that'll do something good for me.
Oh, absolutely. When you take the time to really appreciate it and just spend time in it, I think that goes a long way.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, and I'm not. In fact, you know this. I am not a big outdoorsy person.
Mm-hmm.
Like I hate camping, and I only like hiking if it's like for an hour and it's not steep or rocky, and I don't need any special equipment.
Right.
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 Well, I prefer strolling to
Mm-hmm.
hiking, but even then, just not my thing. But I do find that when I get out and just take a walk, or like you said, just spend time sitting out. Like you encouraged me to go out there in the morning and sit on the deck and read, and I did. And just hearing the sounds. So you don't even have to be studying anything. Just being surrounded by it.
Yeah.
Goes a long way.
Yeah,
Appreciating
it is, and I guess what I'm aiming for by doing it is just a greater. I feel like to be more in touch with nature is to be more at peace. You know what I'm saying? And I don't mean to sound like super deep, because I just feel like I'm really out of touch with nature. And I think that's probably very indicative of people like me who, for their job, sit in front of a computer a lot. Inside.
Yeah.
And are just so tied to different technological elements, and those things are all good things. But I think, like in the past, most of human history, human beings have spent lots more time outside and in touch with nature, like working
think about
the land
how,
and that kind of thing.
I mean, you think about just the, even as recently as the 1800s, people made their living from the land. I mean, farming was the most prevalent occupation.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't until really, the late 1800s that they even started building factories and all that stuff kind of.
Yeah. But even people who weren't farmers, like, still they had their technology was so far less advanced than it is now that they just spent more time outdoors, and they walked.
Yeah, well, they didn't have
they walked places a lot.
I know. Yeah, they didn't have
cars.
They didn't have Wii, right?
Yeah.
They didn't have TV. They didn't have video games. I mean, they didn't have.
They didn't have air conditioning.
They didn't have air conditioning. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, they got their kicks by sitting outside around a bonfire and singing tunes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I think that's probably why, people who love camping, they love camping because it gets them away from that.
Yeah.
For a while, and it forces you to live without all those distractions.
Yeah. Well, I've told you. I'll say this last thing before commercial break. I've told you that one thing I love about, or one thing I really wanted to be able to do at some point is, like, go somewhere and just walk a really long distance. Not like go on vacation, like we've talked about going to Europe or something like that, and just like walk a really long way. Like, not take cars, not ritz it up, but just like go and walk, because I feel like when you walk, you truly get off the beaten path nowadays. Like, you're truly away from all of these things that are luxurious and everything, but really are traps. Can be traps to the soul. And you experience this new sense of freedom and of peace, and of actually experiencing things that other people aren't going to experience. Just experiences, just in terms of vacations and that kind of thing, are so manufactured these days.
Oh yeah, that's true. You
go somewhere and it's like, we went there and we did this and we did this and we did this, just like everybody else who went on vacation there did. And it's like, what's it just feels like you're in the meat grinder. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Did you want to say anything before we take a commercial break?
I was just going to say that I agree. There's a lot of great things that could be, that you can learn and see and do by getting off the beaten path. But it can also be dangerous to get off the beaten path as well, because you don't know what might be hiding out there.
But at the same time, that's part of the sense of adventure.
Yeah.
It can be.
That's true. That's true. But for scaredy cats like me, it can be a little disconcerting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you got to be wise. All right.
Yes.
Commercial time. We'll be right back. Do you know the tale that Tolkien called the kernel of the Middle-earth mythology? Beren and Luthien is the story of an outlaw mortal and an elvish princess tasked with obtaining a Silmaril, one of the holy jewels of the Blessed Realm, from the Iron Crown of the Dark Lord Morgoth. In my new book, Tolkien's Requiem, I explore the legend of these doomed lovers. In doing so, I aim to provide a backdoor into the world of the Silmarillion for those who have struggled to give it a go. One of Tolkien's greatest achievements, the story of Beren and Luthien, deserves to be as well known as The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. Get your copy of Tolkien's Requiem today by visiting truemyths.org/Baron. That's truemyths.org/BEREN. Happy reading! We are back. So, speaking of nature, I have always found this little bit about the fox really strange and out of place in the story.
I was wondering if we were going to talk about that.
Yeah, it's when they go to sleep out in the open, and this is just like maybe a page before Frodo sings "The Road Goes Ever On" song, and
oh yeah, there it is. Okay.
And it says a few creatures came and looked at them when the fire had died away. A fox passing through the wood on business of his own stopped several minutes and sniffed. Hobbits, he thought. Well, what next? I have heard of strange doings in the land, but I have seldom heard of a hobbit sleeping out of doors under a tree. 3 of them. There's something mighty queer behind this. He was quite right, but he never found out any more about it. I just think that's like the weirdest little, like it sounds like something that
really
it sounds like something that would have been like that Tolkien put into like the very early draft of this, because he was still very much in kind of like the Hobbit mode, where his storytelling was a little more whimsical and and a little bit more aimed at children, with like wanting to have like talking animals and that kind of thing. And it's almost like he just held on to it because he just thought it was funny, or he just thought it was
I think
something.
it's definitely Tolkien's sense of humor coming through.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was funny because when I read that, I stopped and I thought, and I was like, I don't remember animals talking in the Lord of the Rings. Like, did I forget this, or do animals really, or is there no... Yeah, I was very confused by it too. But what reminded me of something, I just realized what it was. It reminds me of Narnia, right? Because there's talking animals in Narnia.
Right.
And so I wonder if it may be just like a little nod to his buddy C.S. Lewis. Just being like,
Yeah, I mean...
Maybe, I don't know, maybe like a little poke, like a little jest or something. I don't know.
It's possible.
Because there is a Mr... I don't know, maybe there's not a Mr. Fox. But there are talking animals in the Narnia.
Yeah, well, and I don't really know if... I don't think the fox actually talks. He doesn't say this out loud. It's more like this is going through his head.
Right. But you imagine him talking, I think.
Well, yeah, but I mean, he has very... his thoughts are very human.
Yeah, he's very personified.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's he's not thinking in a very elemental way. He's thinking very like a civilized human being.
Right.
So, yeah, I really don't know what to make of that little passage, but I just think it's funny and in a quirky little note.
Yes.
In this passage. And then it's just funny how it ends. He was quite right, but he never found out any more about it.
And that's it.
Right. Just, I don't know. If anybody has any thoughts out there about what Tolkien was doing with that, I'd love to hear them. But
I wonder if maybe it was just a way of Tolkien just kind of trying to drive home the fact how unusual what these hobbits were doing was. That this was not a kind of thing that...
It might be. Well, I think it also it jumps into my mind. I think you're definitely right about that, but it also jumps into my mind that it almost starts to create a little, because so far they haven't really sensed any danger.
Yeah.
But what this does is it starts to make them seem a little vulnerable. It's like here they are, and while the fox is not going to attack them or anything like that, they're not on guard. Because the fox just comes through and hangs out for a few minutes and sniffs them all.
Right. Right.
And
they don't notice.
And guess who's sniffing for them just a few paragraphs later, right?
That's a good point.
They're about to be in mortal danger. So that's maybe one way of looking at it. That this just points to the fact that they are really not sensing yet just in how much danger they really are.
Yeah. That's a good point.
So.
Yeah.
All right. So another thing I noted is that Sam really comes off as very subservient here.
Oh yeah.
Just a few paragraphs later, after the fox, Pippin says, Sam, get breakfast ready for 9:30. Have you got the bathwater hot? And Sam jumps up, all bleary, and he's like, "No, sir, I haven't, sir." You know, like he's in the military or like he's a recruit in the military or something like that.
Like he's a little private.
Yeah.
Even before that, or maybe I'm jumping ahead, but I feel like at some point Frodo. Maybe I'm jumping ahead, but Frodo was complaining about how heavy his pack was, and he was like, "Sam, I think you gave me all the heavy stuff. Like, what's up?" You know, I think he was just joking. But Sam's like, "Oh, I can put more in my pack, sir." Right. And he's like, very untruthfully, right? Sam remarks, "Well, I can still add more to mine." Yes, yeah. So you're right. He definitely comes across as just very willing to serve. Yeah. Oh yeah. He's ready. Ready at Frodo and Pippin's call, you know. So again, just couple of little indicators of where Sam kind of ranks in the Hobbit society. Yes. So I want to focus on the first poem there, and see if you picked up on the slight difference from the earlier rendering of it. So it reads: "The road goes ever on and on, down from the door where it began. Now far ahead the road has gone, and I must follow if I can, pursuing it with weary feet until it joins some larger way, where many paths and errands meet, and whither then I cannot say." So back on in the first chapter, Bilbo walks out the door of Bag End singing this exact same poem, with one word different. Do you know what that one word different is? I'm trying to figure it out right now, but no. Oh, weary. Mm-hmm. The first one, it says eager. Eager, yeah. Yeah, Bilbo's like ready to go. He's like singing this song and it's like peppy and he's just excited to be hitting the road again. He feels free. And all of a sudden, Frodo's singing this and he feels weary. And Pippin remarks, "That sounds like Bilbo's old rhyming, or it is one of your imitations. It does not sound altogether encouraging." Frodo says, "It came to me then as I was making it up, but I may have heard it long ago." So he heard it 17 years, at least 17 years ago. Right. Certainly reminds me very much of Bilbo in the last years before he went away. But it's just, it's notable, obviously, that he says weary, that his feet are weary. Yeah, I didn't pick up on that. That he's pursuing this with weary feet. With weary feet. He's only just begun. I know. He just started and he's already feeling weary about it. All right. Well, but again, I love the road goes ever on and on as a poem. That was a big inspiration for the reason you chose to... Yeah, for the Tolkien Road. For the name of the podcast. Yeah. All right. Black Riders show up next. Yes. At first they think maybe it's Gandalf, but they see the black horse and they get this sense that something's not right, and so they go hide. Mm-hmm. And what is Frodo? What happens with Frodo? He is... He gets this feeling that he really wants to put on a ring. Right. Yeah, he suddenly gets this unreasoning fear of discovery, and then he thought of the ring. I was thinking about that, and that seems to be how the ring operates on Frodo. Is it always tempts him to put it on when he's in some kind of danger, right? Which is exactly the thing that exposes Frodo and gets him into more trouble. Right. But that's interesting again to think about that from, if we do kind of make the analogy of the ring with evil or of sin, so often people choose to do something that they know to be wrong or that they don't quite feel right about because of like some other danger they're sensing, and they feel like this is the only way of getting around that, right? Mm-hmm. This is the only way that I can ensure that I'm not going to get into more trouble as if I do this thing, right? Yeah. So the ring, it's interesting that the ring operates on Frodo in this way and saying like, oh, just, even though Gandalf told you not to at any cost, just put me on and I'll make you safe, Yeah. Just put me on and I'll make you safe, right? Yes. And it does that to him twice in this chapter. It does, yeah. You have any thoughts about that, or? Well, I'm soliciting thoughts from you, Greta. Well, Yeah, it's
It's alright if you don't.
No, I was just thinking that it's obviously so. What the ring does is it exploits weaknesses, right? Like that's really what it does.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is showing us that Frodo obviously has a great desire to feel safe and to feel protected, and so I never realized that about Frodo before. But that's kind of his deal. That he must have maybe he's a bit insecure.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. That made me think of what Gandalf was saying about how when Frodo tried to give him the ring in chapter 2, Gandalf basically says, like, don't, I would take it from a desire to do good, and Gandalf like feels all this weight on his shoulders because of where he comes from,
right,
and the mission he's been sent on,
and
he would use it from a desire to do good, and so. Yeah, it does really play on like these kind of good desires. The desire to be safe and sound is a good desire, right, on Frodo's part. But it uses that good desire and twists it into doing something that is a bad move, right? That puts you actually in more danger, right. Yeah. So. Very sinister operations.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. Yeah.
All right.
Kind of ironical.
Ironical. Is ironical a word?
I don't know. Yeah. But it should be.
Okay, fair enough.
That's my contribution.
Well, I wanted to jump ahead and talk about the elves now.
Yeah, finally.
Are we ready to talk about the elves? Did you have anything before we got there?
I just wanted to, just kind of so this is these black riders. Is it also what we call a ring wraith?
Yeah,
it is. Yeah. Okay, so that's what in Joshua's poem that he was alluding to, right? Where these black riders are those 9 mortal men who were absorbed by the ring. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
And that rider he tries to find them twice.
Yeah, and the second time he's about to find him, and then the elves come along, and the rider goes scrambling.
Right, yeah, the elves saved him the second time.
Yeah.
That's right.
Once more the desire to slip on the ring came over Frodo, but this time it was stronger than before. So strong that almost before he realized what he was doing, his hand was groping in his pocket. But at that moment there came a sound like mingled song and laughter. Clear voices rose and fell in the starlit air. The black shadow straightened up and retreated. It climbed onto the shadowy horse and seemed to vanish across the lane into the darkness on the other side. Frodo breathed again. And then Sam says, "Elves!
Yes,
elves, sir!"
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and Sam is just thrilled.
He's just beside himself.
Yeah, to be...
He has major, what's that called? Starstruck. He's just
Right.
Yeah.
He just can't believe it's elves. So... let's talk about this song they're singing.
Let's do that.
Snow white, O lady clear, O queen beyond the western seas.
Wait, I thought you were actually going to sing it.
I don't know the tune for it.
Oh.
And I don't want to make it up as I go along, because I wouldn't do it justice. Snow white, O lady clear, O queen beyond the western seas, O light to us that wander here amid the world of woven trees. Gilthoniel, O Elbereth, clear are thy eyes and bright thy breath. Snow white, we sing to thee in a far land beyond the sea. O stars that in the sunless year with shining hand by her were sown, in windy fields now bright and clear we see your silver blossom blown. O Elbereth, Gilthoniel, we still remember, we who dwell in this far land beneath the trees, thy starlight on the western seas. So, who is Elbereth? Do you remember?
Well, I will admit that I had to Google it. But I did recognize the name. I knew we had talked about her in the Silmarillion, and it's Varda.
Yes, it's Varda, right. The Lady of the Stars, right?
Yes.
Queen of the Stars. Elbereth actually means Star Queen in Quenya, or Sindar, and I think it's Quenya. And then Gilthoniel means Star Kindler, right?
Okay. But they're basically... They're two, she means the same person.
Right.
Right, it's just two different names for her. Okay.
Right, yeah. it's just various titles for her. And remember,
Right.
she's the one that set the stars in the sky,
Right.
Under which the elves originally awoke, right?
Right, that's right, yes,
Right.
okay.
So, she is very special to the elves, and they are singing this hymn to her. Now, which elves are these? Do you know?
Well, Frodo calls them high elves,
Yeah.
and I don't know what
Okay, well,
group those are.
so he also says they're the House of Finrod. Does that help you?
No.
Well, he doesn't say. I'm
I didn't
sorry.
have my genealogy
Gildor says that.
tree handy.
So, of the House of Finrod means that they are Noldor. They're Noldoran elves,
okay.
right? So, I know you don't know. We haven't quite gotten there in the Silmarillion of what happens after.
Maybe they
No, we did get there. That's right.
The flight of the Noldor.
The flight of the Noldor. We did get to that where at least, so they all flee to kind of pursue Morgoth
Right.
into Beleriand, and Feanor and his sons leave all the rest of the Noldor behind, and then the rest of the Noldor come behind them. Right?
Yes.
Remember that?
Yes.
So, but they're all Noldor, and so when they talk about the High Elves, that's really who they're talking about. There are a few exceptions to that, but the Noldor are the High Elves that they're referring to here.
Okay.
So, you're going to find out more when we go back and finish the Silmarillion of like, the whole history of the Noldor in Middle-earth in the First Age. But Gildor is one of those guys.
Okay.
He is of that house, and from what I can tell, Gildor was actually, I think, it seems like he was actually in Valinor, right? That he actually, it's not like he was born after the Noldor came to Beleriand, but it seems like he was probably around when
During the flight?
when they were in Valinor. Yeah, so
Okay.
he might even remember Varda personally,
Oh, okay.
right?
Okay.
Of having seen her face to face, right?
Okay, yeah.
Which is something really, pretty cool to think about.
Absolutely, yeah.
Here's the interesting thing about Gildor. All right, it would seem so when Tolkien wrote this, when he finished the Lord of the Rings, it was still like 23, 24 years before the Silmarillion was finally published. Right.
Okay.
So even during this time, the Silmarillion was still in the process of evolving.
Okay.
And all the history of the First Age. So no one actually knows what Gildor's exact genealogy is, right? It's never clear. It's never made explicitly clear anywhere. Because he says he's of the House of Finrod. You don't know too much about Finrod just yet.
No.
But it's at first it may have sounded like that he was actually a son of Finrod from hearing that, or descended from Finrod. But the problem is that Finrod became somebody else in the process of finishing the Silmarillion, right?
Oh.
So the name Finrod is still in there, but Finrod, I believe I'm getting this right, actually became Finarfin later on, right? This Finrod actually became Finarfin. Okay?
Have we gotten to that yet in the Silmarillion?
No, we haven't.
Oh, okay.
We haven't. But we do know who Finarfin is.
Yeah, we know
right?
Finarfin. It's like my new favorite verb.
Yeah, so anyway, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that Gildor is apparently of the House of Finarfin.
I see.
So,
okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I thought you'd be interested to know that.
Well, yeah.
Is what I'm getting at.
Said Finarfin is my most favorite verb.
Which is probably a guy, why he's he seems to like to have a good time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It sounds like he throws a pretty awesome party.
Yeah.
There under the trees.
Yeah. So,
what's awesome about that, he actually apologized for it.
Right.
He was like, yeah, this is just like a makeshift, like out in the middle of nowhere feast, so forgive us, it's really not that great. Come to my real house, and then I'll really show you a good time.
Right.
But I mean, this party that they describe under the trees, I'd like to go to there.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I'd like to go to any party thrown by the elves. I'm going to try and find this little article because I want to make sure I get it right on Gildor, the whole confusion around Gildor. So,
can I ask why it matters?
Huh?
Can I ask why it matters? Why does it matter where he comes from?
Because everything matters in Tolkien.
Well, I didn't mean that to be like...
No, it's an interesting problem because whenever the elves come up in like the Lord of the Rings, it's always interesting to understand where they came from, right? Like we made the connection with Varda, right?
Right, yeah.
So when you read, the first time you read through the Lord of the Rings, if you haven't read the Silmarillion, you have no idea what they're talking about when you read all that. You're just like, this is, I guess that's some pretty poetry, but I have no idea what it means.
Right, yeah.
And then Gildor comes along, and he's only here for a little while, and he shows up at the very end again of the Lord of the Rings, but that's it. And so it's like, who is this guy Gildor, you know?
Okay.
And why did he even show up?
Okay.
Right? This happens a lot in Tolkien's works. And so sometimes it's interesting to just dig back into, into what's going on here, partly because that's part of the enchantment that Tolkien works, right? Is there's depth to these guys. This isn't somebody who comes into the story because they're going to play some vital role later on, right?
I see. Yeah.
They literally are passing around doing some business of their own, and Frodo just happens to stumble upon them, right? It wouldn't surprise me if Tolkien had like all of Gildor's week before and after this scene mapped out somewhere, right? That's just the kind of guy Tolkien was, you know.
Yeah.
That was how he rolled.
Yeah.
So fine. So anyway, I don't know. This is going to get really technical, but I'm looking this up on TolkienGateway.net. It should be argued that the name Inglorion, which means son of Inglor, suggests that he was in fact the son of Finrod Felagund himself, who at the time of writing still had the name Inglor. There are, however, strong arguments against it, and they list some. However, the name Inglor reappeared in Quenya form for Finarfin. Finarfin's mother name was Ingallare. If Ingallare is to be translated in Sindarin according to the sound-changing rules, this would become Inglor. Thus, the connection of Gildor to the House of Finrod and Finarfin still remains in the updated legendarium. This all suggests that while Gildor might have been initially intended to be Felagund's son, in the final version he probably became a member of the House of Finrod as one of its servants, not one of its sons. Perhaps one of the Knights of Nargothrond. So, that will all make sense to you after we read the Silmarillion.
Okay.
But suffice to say that it looks like Gildor is maybe not a direct descendant of like Fëanor or Fenway, but he's more like a servant of the House of Fenway.
Okay.
In the final analysis, but still kind of an important guy and still a witness to much.
Right.
Much.
Yeah, sure.
A number of important events and important people. So
yeah,
it's neat to see Frodo interacting with him here.
I see.
Yeah. All right. That's just the kinds of points we make with Tolkien stuff. You're not buying it, okay? All right.
I think it's great. We need people like you
to bore us.
No, I just like hearing all that stuff.
To be made into Soylent Green.
To what?
To be made into Soylent Green. Soylent Green's made of people, you know. It's this
I did not know.
old movie thing.
Oh,
joke
okay.
Kind of thing. You saying we need people like you, and then I said to be made into Soylent Green.
No, that's not what I was talking about.
All right. Okay, so, yeah. So, any other big thoughts on this chapter? Any other thoughts with the elves? I feel like I'm kind of blabbing on.
Yeah, seriously, you and your genealogy.
But nerd, what can I say?
Seriously.
Tolkien nerd.
Good thing I'm here to keep things cool.
Yeah.
And
cool.
Anyway,
yeah, you're pretty cool, I guess.
Oh yeah. So what I wanted to say was that I thought it was cool that near the end, I mean, these people just met, right? I mean, Frodo just met this guy Gildor, like just happened to come upon him, and this guy just happened to save his life, and all that. But anyway, they haven't really been together for that long, right? But you can tell that Frodo really looks up to this guy, and he really values his advice. And he asks, he's like, basically bearing his soul to this elf, and telling how worried he is about Gandalf, and I don't know what I'm doing or where I'm going. What do you think I should do?
Yeah.
Right? And Gildor's like, I really don't like to say. And I thought that was just some really, I like that. I just really like that exchange at the end, and how Frodo just keeps pushing him, like, please help me. And then finally at the end, he's like, okay, Gildor's like, okay, I'm not supposed to be telling you this, but here's what you should do.
Yeah.
And I was just a very touching scene to me. It shows, first of all, Frodo. Like, it really does kind of expose that insecurity and fear, really, that he has. And, really sets him up as this really unlikely hero, right? And then, but it also it kind of warms your soul a little bit to see this guy who was a stranger just a few hours ago now really, really having kind of an integral role, really, in the future of Frodo's journey.
Right. Well, that made me think of how impressed I was with Frodo's stature, with his ability to kind of like, obviously the elves are very friendly towards them, but at the same time, Frodo, he really does like kind of go toe to toe with Gildor when he's asking for his advice, and he's not just like, oh, okay, if you don't want to give me any advice, you don't have to.
He really keeps pushing him.
Yeah. I was kind of impressed by Frodo because I feel like in the film, I like Elijah Wood's portrayal of Frodo and everything, but at times I feel like he comes off as a little bit too wussy. And while Frodo at times, that'll be an interesting discussion as we go along, what Frodo's character is like, but I feel like Frodo has a higher stature than the movies give him credit for, even from the start. Like, I feel like he's kind of a greater hobbit, he has that Tookish strain in him, right?
He does.
Yeah. Whenever I say Tookish, I feel like I'm saying Tookus. Not what I mean to say.
Right. I know
but he has that Tookish strain in him,
right.
Yeah. He
doesn't
does have
back down.
He has a little greater stature than a lot of other or hobbits. But I like what he says when Gildor says to him, "Do not meddle in the affairs of wizards, for they are subtle and quick to anger. The choice is yours, to go or wait." It's like, thank you, genius.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Tell me something I don't know, please. And he responds and he says, "And it is also said, go not to the elves for counsel, for they will say both no and yes." I love that.
I love that too. I was going to bring that up if you didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was brilliant. I was like, oh, that is too funny.
I mean, it
kind of reminded me of the Burt Macklin.
Yeah.
He was right.
And wrong.
They will say both no.
Well, I feel like that's something that has, since the first time I read it, that's kind of stuck with me whenever people ask me advice, because I feel like I do have a propensity for saying both no and yes.
Well, don't you think that kind of comes from, and you can tell it's obviously this case with Gildor here too, like it's a way of just covering your own bum, you don't want to give somebody advice and they go and follow it and they end up in a worse position.
Yeah.
You don't want to be that person that leads somebody down the wrong path.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, Gildor kind of makes that point. He says, I don't know the whole story. Like, right. I've been able to discern quite a bit, but I don't know the whole reason that you're on the run and that the minions of Mordor are after you.
Right.
Right. So I don't want to. It's almost like he's saying, look, you're wearing big boy pants now. You're not in the Shire anymore. It's almost like a way of saying, like, Frodo, you have to start learning to make these kind of elvish decisions for yourself. We're getting to the point where no one can make them for you anymore.
Right. Yep.
And they've been looking for Gandalf this whole time, wondering where the heck Gandalf is, and they're starting to get worried about it. And Frodo is like, "This was not part of the equation. Gandalf is supposed to be here to make all the decisions for me."
Right. Yeah. That's true.
I thought I was just going to be taking this ring as far as Rivendell, and then somebody else was going to take care of this problem. Of course, he recognizes from the beginning that might not be the case, but yeah, you can definitely tell that Frodo is looking for some person who's super wise to give him some advice here.
Yeah, because he's not comfortable doing it himself.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure most people out there on the, kind of when you transition from childhood to adulthood, as if there's really a discrete point at which that happens, like, you do realize at some point, you kind of progressively realize over time that, like, the training wheels will come off this thing. Like, I can ask adults, people who I've asked before for advice, but they're less and less inclined to just give me straight up advice anymore because they recognize that they're meddling in the affairs of another adult now.
Right.
You know.
Yep. Absolutely.
And I'm not just some kid that's just gonna. That there's less consequence in giving advice to a kid most of the time because they've got parents to kind of,
help steer them,
or they're not deciding as big of things, right?
Small potatoes compared to big potatoes,
right? But even like when people give counsel to adults, it's usually like, well, you need to tell me a lot more information about yourself first before I can, and the whole situation before I can give you good counsel,
Right.
And that's, I guess that's really what Gildor is getting at. It's
I think that is what he's getting at.
There's no easy answers for you, Frodo.
Yeah. No, this is, I agree. He's really forcing Frodo to take ownership of the fact that, it's really, he's out for himself. Like he can ask for advice and people can try to guide him, but push comes to shove, he's got to be the one to make the call. Yes. Because he's the one that was chosen to do this.
Absolutely.
And I think it's something that Frodo may still be in a little bit of denial about. He's kind of like, is this really happening?
I've been there before. Obviously not with the One Ring, but
no, not with the ring.
But yeah, I mean, again, there comes a time where you're like, I really don't have anybody backing me up, making sure I don't screw this up anymore. Like, I'm sort of on my own when it comes to this.
And it's a real growing experience.
Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah. Now, in all of that, again with the world of Tolkien, there is this lingering sense that there is a providential guidance going on that's far above and far outside of his understanding. But it's all very much in the background, and it's always kind of just leaves you in suspense, like, what the heck is going to happen to me next, and am I really prepared for it? And ultimately he says, he's like, I just need courage, Gildor, I just need courage. That's
then he asks, but where can I find it?
Where can I find it? Yeah, courage is found in unlikely places. Be of good hope. Sleep now. Good advice. Sometimes we just need to decide to be hopeful.
We've talked about this before.
And then get a good night's sleep.
Sometimes we just need the day to end. And wake up fresh in the morning with a clean slate.
Yes.
Yeah. But you see, I think there's a lot of growth that happens in this chapter because, even, that first instance with the Black Rider, really hiding is kind of a last minute afterthought, right? They're just kind of standing there like, who's? I wonder. And then it's not really until the Black Rider's almost upon them that Frodo gets this, like, urging, like, you should probably not be seen right now. Right? And so, again, the whole thing with the fox, like you were saying, it shows how not on guard they were, right? And then by the end of this chapter, I think he realizes, rats.
Yeah.
I may be a little deeper into this than I thought.
Yeah.
Already.
People are on my trail.
Right. Yeah.
The conversation with Gildor definitely indicates that there's people out there that, are not just other hobbits in the Shire. Like they're able to put two and two together a lot more quickly than the people that Frodo's normally used to dealing with, and they're quickly catching up to his scent. Yes. Right? Yeah. Literally and figuratively. Yeah.
Yeah, he's really, this is really, is this Frodo's first time out of the Shire? Like, has he left the Shire before? I can't remember.
I don't think he's ever left the Shire. He's gone on adventures with Bilbo before, but I don't know if they've I think maybe they've gone out of the Shire, but I don't think it's like ever been anything quite to this level.
To this extent.
Yeah.
It's a big world out there. That's what a big dangerous world.
Yes, indeed.
Quickly discovering that.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts on the chapter?
No, that's good.
Right. Well, so next week we'll continue with chapter 4, A Shortcut to Mushrooms.
I love mushrooms.
I know you do. I'm kind of toying with the idea of when we're going to get back to doing some more of the Silmarillion.
Okay.
We're going to do chapter 4 next week, but hopefully I'll have a decision on how much more we're going to continue in the Fellowship before we pause from that for a little while and go back to the Silmarillion and do a little more there. So we'll see. But chapter 4 next week.
Alrighty, ready.
And
send us more haikus.
Yeah, send us more haikus, and thanks for chatting with me, Greta.
My pleasure.
And thanks everybody for listening.
Yes, thanks guys.
And if you think about it, leave us a rating on iTunes.
Yes, please.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, y'all.
Please remember to check out truemyths.org for show notes as well as other Tolkien goodness. Also, we hope you're enjoying this podcast as much as we enjoy making it. Please leave the Tolkien Road a rating and feedback on iTunes. On the next episode, we continue our discussion of The Lord of the Rings with Chapter 4 of Fellowship, a shortcut to mushrooms. Please tune in, and thanks for listening.